Welcome back to the Lars Larson Show. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I'll be glad to get back to your phone calls and emails, but it is always a pleasure to welcome to the program Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch. And Tom, I got to tell you, some big stuff is happening tomorrow. We got Robert Mueller and the testimony that I guess he's going to give. And we've got Ilhan Omar, who's been quick to attack the president, accuse him of wrongdoing. But a brand new complaint says that she's got some pretty good skeletons in her closet. All of this, the good work of Judicial Watch. Thanks for taking the time tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Lars. These are kind of interesting days we're in, don't we? The president's being attacked for doing nothing wrong, and despite all this evidence of wrongdoing by Ilhan Omar related to the seeming marriage to her brother, and all the attendant law violations that are tied to that, the big media is protecting her, and that's why we filed a House ethics complaint asking if these serious allegations, which are substantial and based on documents and other things, be investigated by the House.
Well, let's talk about the particulars of this, because I want people to understand this. As I understand the timeline, because I've been reading about this for months, and I haven't said a lot about it just because it's one of those where the media, as you say, is trying to walk away from this story. You have a member of Congress in Ilhan Omar who has been married to two different women, or two different men, and one of them twice. So she was married in her faith tradition, then she's not married to the man, and she's married to another man but doesn't live with him, but lives with the other man that she will eventually marry again, and then she is divorced from the second man, and then married to the first man again. You almost need a flow chart to understand where it all went. But there's a belief that this second man, Hersey, is her brother. Now, can we establish that the man that she married, apparently for citizenship, for his citizenship, was her brother?
Yeah, the biological brother allegedly would be, his last name would be Elmi, which was her original last name, based on all the evidence that's out there. And there's strong circumstantial evidence that this man that she wasn't living with, that she was married to, was her brother. And there are all sorts of potential reasons that marriage took place related to immigration fraud, student loan fraud, and other benefits he would have been able to get as a result of being married to a U.S. citizen like she was. Look, it's so bad, Lars, that we're not even sure her last name is Omar, because it looks the information out there conducted as a result of an investigation by Paroline Blog suggests that she and some of her family members came to the United States under another family name. Her family name actually is Elmi, hence the biological brother that she potentially was married to. This isn't crackpot material. This is information that's been backed up by an investigation by our hometown left-wing newspaper, who's been covering it up for several years, who finally admitted that she probably married her biological brother. And what we're asking for is at least a House ethics investigation. Certainly the federal authorities ought to be investigating her as well, given all this information out there.
And Tom, at the end of the day, I mean, when I sign my voter registration card, I put down information and then I sign it. And if I engage in false swearing by signing to something that isn't true, like I have a wrong birth date on it or something like that, I'm committing a crime. If she filed both as a voter, if she became a citizen, if she filed for office and she signed her name to papers that are not true, then she's a member of Congress who broke the law in both registering to vote and in running for office, didn't she?
Yeah, these are pretty serious allegations in terms of the potential criminal liability. And then, of course, you've got the political that the House has, where they have this outlaw member potentially that has to be if these allegations are true, she can't be a House member.
And does it seem to you that some of the defense against this, first of all, when her campaign has been asked about the allegations, it seems to me in all the versions I've read, articles I've read about it, they never overtly deny the charge. They merely say, they give a kind of a blustery defense that, oh, of course that's not true. But has anybody been able to get a straight yes or no answer to is Almi your brother?
No. Scott Johnson of Paroline Blog was on Fox the other night, and he said it's about a 98% chance she engaged in marriage fraud, and it was a 90% chance it was with her brother. And if you don't believe the Paroline Blog, then read the Star Tribune out of Minneapolis, who's basically, without giving credit to Paroline, did their own analysis and found that she was being not only the documents strongly suggest and what happened strongly suggests that she married her brother, but that she was being cagey in the response by, for instance, showing immigration papers on her phone as opposed to just supplying them. It's a very, very odd and unusual behavior. And, of course, she's playing the race card to try to protect herself from further inquiry, but we won't be cowed by that type of dishonesty.
So what's the likelihood that the Congress or the DOJ will take a hard look at this? Because immigration fraud's a serious matter. I mean, I've covered it here in my region. When Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, this Indian guru, had 400 of his citizen members marry 400 non-citizens, he engaged in this massive immigration fraud. It was to get people into the country illegally. The DOJ takes that seriously. Should the DOJ now be taking this seriously if there is a member of Congress who may have engaged in immigration fraud and may not even be qualified to be a member of Congress?
I would hope so, and I'm sure it's something fraught with political peril if they're going to be even asking questions here, but they need to be asking these questions. We just can't allow or continue to allow powerful, politically protected individuals and officials in the federal government to go to get away with evident wrongdoing that would have put anyone else in jail or maybe even worse.
I'm talking to Tom Fitton, who's president of Judicial Watch, and you should remember Judicial Watch is an organization, I'm doing this unsolicited, that needs your support because Tom Fitton and his crew do not do their work without, financial resources. Before I let you go, Tom, I want to get your view of what you think is going to happen tomorrow as Robert Mueller steps up in front of this committee.
In many ways, his testimony is irrelevant. It's just a circus the Democrats need to try to resurrect the idea that the president should be impeached and removed from office. If he's doing his job, he wouldn't have testified at all because he's not really allowed to testify about anything other than what's in the complaint. I'm hoping that Republicans and maybe even an honest Democrat or two, assuming there are any on the committees, ask him questions about the maladministration of his office, which I think is the key issue. His unwillingness to hire anyone but Hillary Clinton supporters, and partisans, and his hiding of the bias of Peter Strzok from the American people, the FBI official who was fired for those text messages, was an anti-Trump and pro-Hillary Clinton activist and booster. They hid the fact that he was there and had to be removed. They hid that fact for 4 months from the American people.
Well, will the Republican members of Congress, if they got the backbone to do it, will they have the latitude to ask him questions about why he stacked the deck that way with his own staff and why these other matters were hidden, apparently by his own staff?
Yeah, I think he'll be asked those questions. I'm sure he's bringing his now chief of staff to help him answer those questions. So they're prepared to avoid answering directly those questions. Another big one is when did he know there was no collusion, and why didn't he tell the American people when he knew that? And I suspect prevarications, and he'll walk around the answers. So I don't think we'll get much more information from Mueller, but it's about time at least someone asked him a question or two under oath about what he did in terms of the abuse of powers that he allowed his special counsel's office to engage in.
Couldn't agree with you more. Tom, keep up the good work at Judicial Watch. We'll encourage people to support your efforts. Thanks so very much.
You're welcome, Lars. Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's Tom Fitton with us. Now, coming up in a moment, if there are only 32 million low-income households in the United States, why do we allow more than 40 million Americans, more than 10% of the population, to be enrolled in the food stamp program? We'll talk about that, and I'll get to your calls at 866-439-5277.